Ethan Carter had everything: wealth, power, and a beautiful wife expecting their first child. But one stormy night, she vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a cryptic note. Years later, a chance encounter with a little girl would unravel secrets he never saw coming. For 5 years, Ethan Carter lived with a haunting question: what happened to his wife and unborn child? The woman he loved disappeared without a trace, leaving him drowning in guilt and unanswered questions. But when he sees a little black girl with his striking green eyes, his world stops. Could she be his daughter? And if so, what really happened to Naomi? If this story moved you, do not forget to like, comment, and share your thoughts. How would you have handled Maya's choice? Subscribe for more powerful and emotional stories that touch the heart. The soft hum of rain against the glass filled the quiet mansion. Inside, Ethan Carter stood near the grand window, a glass of untouched whiskey in his hand. His empire was built from the ground up, wealth beyond measure, power that many envied. But despite it all, there was an emptiness in his eyes. Across the vast living room, Naomi sat on the couch, her hands gently cradling her growing belly. She was radiant, even under the dim glow of the chandelier. Ethan loved her with a depth he had never known before, but love was not always enough. His family had made that clear. Victoria Carter, his mother, was a woman of unwavering tradition. She had never accepted Naomi, never considered her worthy of the Carter name. The tension had been there from beginning. Polite smiles masking cold rejection, whispered conversations that ceased when Naomi entered the room. Even the household staff, trained to be discreet, could not hide their unease. Ethan had promised Naomi that none of it mattered, that his love would be enough. But the weight of expectation bore down on him, pulling him into long nights at work, leaving Naomi alone in a house that never felt like home. And in that silence, doubt began to creep in. She had tried to ignore the stares, the hushed tones behind closed doors. But lately, something felt different. There was a growing sense of unease, a feeling that she was being watched. She wanted to talk to Ethan about it, but he had enough on his shoulders. So she kept it to herself. That was her first mistake. The storm had rolled in without warning. Thunder rumbled through the night as Ethan stirred in his sleep, reaching for Naomi. But his hand met only the cold sheets. His eyes snapped open. The room was dark, too still. He sat up, calling her name, but there was no answer. The house felt different, empty, as if something had been ripped away. A single envelope sat on the nightstand. His name was written on it in Naomi's delicate handwriting. With shaking hands, he unfolded the note. "Forgive me." The word sent a chill through him. He stumbled out of bed, searching every room, every hallway. No trace of her. Panic set in. He called the police, but their search led nowhere. No forced entry. No signs of struggle. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Ethan's family barely reacted. His mother simply pressed a hand to his shoulder and said, "Some people are not meant to stay." He refused to believe she had left on her own. Something was wrong. He hired the best investigators money could buy, searching every corner of the city, chasing every lead. Weeks turned into months. Then years. Nothing. His world fell apart. His once thriving business took a back seat to his grief. He stopped attending events, stopped caring about his wealth. Every night, he sat in the dim glow of his study, staring at that note, searching for meaning in two words that gave him none. The woman he loved was gone, and with her, the child he never got to meet. Then, just when he lost all hope, fate placed a familiar face in front of him. The city had lost its appeal long ago. Ethan had taken a business trip out of obligation, not desire. The small town he found himself in was quiet, unremarkable. But as he walked through a park, something stopped him in his tracks. A child's laughter. Light, carefree, but it was not the sound that froze him. It was the eyes. A little girl, no older than 5, sat on a swing, her legs kicking gently as she gazed up at the sky. Her skin was a warm shade of brown, her curls bouncing as she moved. And then there were her eyes, green, piercing, exactly like his. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. It was impossible. Before he could take a step forward, a woman approached the girl. She was protective, wary. She took the child's hand, glancing around as if sensing danger. Their eyes met for the briefest moment, and Ethan saw something in her expression. Recognition. The woman turned, leading the girl away. Ethan forced his feet to move, but before he could call out, they were gone, swallowed by the crowd. His heart pounded. That little girl, could she be his daughter? And if she was, what had happened to Naomi? The questions swirled, but one thing was certain. He could not walk away from this. Not now. Not ever. Ethan could not shake the image of the little girl. Her eyes haunted him, pulling him into a past he had tried and failed to leave behind. It was not a coincidence. It could not be. The very next day, he began his search. It did not take long to find her again. The town was small, the people familiar with one another. She was called Lena, 5 years old, a child who, by all logic, should not exist, but did. He watched from a distance as she played, her laughter light and carefree. It was like a sound from a dream, something he had imagined for years but had never heard. Then, there was a woman, Ava. Ethan approached her, his voice calm but firm. "Who is she?" Ava stiffened, stepping between him and Lena. "I do not know what you are talking about." Ethan's chest tightened. "That little girl. She is..." He swallowed hard. "She is mine, is not she?" Ava's expression did not waver. "You need to leave." Ethan was losing control. He could feel it. Anger, desperation, a flicker of hope. Emotions crashed into each other, making it hard to think. He had spent years drowning in grief, searching for answers. Now, he was standing inches away from one, and she was slipping through his fingers. He hired a private investigator again. He had been down this road before, but this time it felt different. This time he had something real. Ava remained distant, her warnings growing sharper. "Stay away," she told him. "You do not know what you're stepping into." But Ethan had spent too long in the dark. He was not going anywhere. The search for Naomi led him down a path he had never expected. Every clue brought more questions, each answer more unsettling than the last. Through his investigator, he learned about a network, an underground organization that helped women escape abusive situations. It sent a chill through him. Naomi had never said she was afraid, never once hinted that she wanted to leave. But had she felt trapped? Had she believed she had no other choice? The memories began to resurface. His mother's words, cold and sharp. "She will never fit in, Ethan. You are building a life on a foundation that will not hold." The staff's hushed whispers whenever Naomi entered the room. His own distance, the long nights, the exhaustion, the way it let his mother's disapproval weigh on him. Had Naomi been trying to tell him something all along? Had he been too blind to see it? He confronted Victoria, demanding the truth, but she merely smiled, unbothered by his rage. "Sometimes people make choices for their own good," she said smoothly. "And sometimes those choices are made for them." Her words made his blood run cold. He turned to the only person he could trust, Detective Harris, an old friend who had worked on Naomi's case before it went cold. Harris hesitated before nodding. "I will look into it," he said, "but you need to be ready for whatever we find." Ethan already knew the truth would change everything. He just did not know how much. The first real lead came faster than expected. Harris tracked down an old clinic, one that had long since closed down. A single document remained, proof that Naomi had given birth there under a different name. Ethan could not breathe. She had been alive. She had delivered their child. And she had done it alone. He stormed to Ava's house, his patience gone. "You knew," he said, his voice raw. "You knew all along." Ava's shoulders sagged. She no longer tried to push him away. "It is time," she murmured. She led him inside. The air felt heavy, thick with unspoken words. Ava reached into a drawer, pulling out a sealed envelope. She turned it over in her hands before finally holding out to him. His name was written on the front, Naomi's handwriting. Ethan's hands trembled as he reached for it. Ava's voice was barely above a whisper. "She is gone, Ethan." The room spun. Gone. the woman he had loved, the mother of his child, the person he had spent years searching for. She was never coming back. His throat tightened. He had imagined so many possibilities: kidnapping, hiding, even betrayal. But not this. Never this. Ava hesitated before speaking again. She wanted you to have this. Ethan looked down at the letter. His fingers gripped the edges as if afraid it might disappear. He took a breath, then slowly opened it. The words inside would change everything. Ethan unfolded the letter with trembling hands. His breath was uneven, his heart pounding in his chest. Naomi's handwriting, so familiar, so painfully real, covered the page. Ethan, if you are reading this, then I did not make it back to you. His grip tightened. I never wanted to leave, but I had no choice. The night before I disappeared, Victoria was planning something. I overheard her speaking to someone on the phone. She was going to have me taken away, removed from your life for good. I could not let that happen, not when I was carrying our child. Ethan's vision blurred. His mother, she had known something all along. I ran before they could act. Ava helped me. She was the only one I could trust. He turned to Ava, his voice hoarse. You help her escape? Ava's face was somber. She begged me, Ethan. She was terrified. He looked back at the letter. I wanted to come back. I wanted you to meet our baby. But things did not go as planned. The delivery, it was too much for me. I fought, Ethan. I fought to stay for her, for you, but my body had already made its choice. Ethan's breath hitched. A sharp, unbearable pain pierced his chest. Promise me one thing. Do not let our daughter grow up without knowing love. She deserves to know who she is, where she comes from. She deserves you. The paper slipped from his fingers. He buried his face in his hands, his whole body trembling. The woman he had loved, the woman he had spent years searching for, had died alone, afraid, protecting the one thing they had created together. When he finally looked up, his eyes were filled with only one thing: determination. I am bringing Lena home. Ethan did not waste a second. He met with his lawyers, preparing to fight for custody. Lena was his daughter. She belonged with him. But Ava did not back down. Naomi did not want her anywhere near your family, she told him firmly. She made me promise to keep her safe. That is what I am doing. Ethan clenched his jaw. I am not my mother. Ava sighed. Maybe not, but can you promise Lena will never be forced into that world? Ethan knew what she meant. The Carter family name was powerful, but with that power came expectations, obligations, the same ones that had tried to erase Naomi from his life. A custody battle began. Ava was determined. But Ethan had evidence, proof that his mother had orchestrated Naomi's suffering, that she had been willing to destroy lives to maintain control. His mother fought back. You are not fit to raise a child. Victoria spat in the courtroom. You let your emotions cloud your judgment. That girl is better off where she is. Ethan stood his ground. He had made mistakes, but he would not let his mother steal another part of his life. Lena, too young to understand the battle being fought over her, began spending time with Ethan under court supervision. She was cautious at first, watching him with quiet curiosity. But then one afternoon, as she played with her dolls, she turned to him with wide, innocent eyes. Are you my daddy? The words nearly knocked the air from his lungs. He swallowed hard. Yes, he whispered. I am. She studied him for a moment, then nodded, as if she had always known. Ava watched from across the room, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. For the first time, Ethan saw something shift in her. Doubt. The case was not going in Ethan's favor. Ava had been Lena's guardian for years. The court saw no reason to remove her from a stable home. Then, an unexpected witness came forward, a former servant from the Carter estate. An older woman with tired eyes stood before the judge. I worked for the Carters for over 20 years, she said, her voice shaking. I saw what Victoria did. She made Naomi's life unbearable. And that night, she was planning to get rid of her. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Victoria's face darkened, but she could not deny it now. The truth was out. The judge ruled in Ethan's favor. He was granted full custody. Victoria was finished. Ethan did not look back as he walked out of that courtroom. He had already made his choice. His family had never been the wealth and status they had built. It was Naomi, and now it was Lena. But one challenge remained. Would Lena accept him? That night, rain poured outside Ava's house. Ethan stood at the door, drenched, heart pounding. Ava hesitated, then stepped aside, letting him in. Lena sat on the floor, her small fingers twisting in her dress. She looked up, her green eyes filled with questions. Ethan knelt before her, his voice shaking. "I am your father." For a long moment, there was silence. Then, slowly, Lena's tiny arms wrapped around his neck. Ethan held her tight, tears slipping down his face. He had lost Naomi, but he would not lose their daughter. This time, he would not let go. Ethan sat across from Ava in the quiet of her living room. The storm outside had passed, but the weight of their conversation still hung in the air. "I am not trying to take her from you," Ethan said, his voice steady. "But she is my daughter. I want to be in her life." Ava sighed, her eyes filled with hesitation. "She has only ever known me as family. Uprooting her now." She trailed off, struggling with the decision. "I do not want to take anything from her. I just want to be her father." Ethan said softly. A long silence stretched between them before Ava finally nodded. "We will take it slow. Lena stays with me for now, but you will be part of her life. When she is old enough to decide, she will know she has a choice." Relief flooded Ethan. It was not full custody, but it was a beginning. In the following weeks, Ethan devoted himself to fatherhood. Every spare moment was spent with Lena, reading to her, taking her to the park, answering her endless questions. She was cautious at first, but over time, she started calling him Dad. One evening, Ethan stood before Naomi's grave, the wind rustling through the trees. "I found her," he whispered, kneeling. "She is beautiful, Naomi. She is strong, just like you." He placed a single white rose on the stone. "I promise to love her enough for both of us." Tears welled in his eyes as he whispered, "I miss you." But as he stood, he felt something different, a peace he had not known in years. He was not alone anymore. Ethan once believed success was measured in wealth, status, and power. But now, standing in Lena's room as she slept, he knew the truth. Love was the only thing that mattered. He had spent years trapped in grief, allowing his mother's influence to dictate his choices. But Naomi's sacrifice had given him another chance, a chance to break the cycle. Ava, too, had learned something valuable. She had spent years protecting Lena, keeping her safe in the world she feared. But keeping Lena safe did not mean keeping her from love. "She is lucky to have you," Ava admitted one day as they watched Lena play. "We are lucky to have her," Ethan corrected, smiling. In the end, justice had prevailed. Redemption had been found, and the past no longer had the power to control the future. Lena would grow up knowing not just the love of her mother, but the unwavering devotion of her father. Years later, Ethan stood in the middle of the school auditorium, adjusting his tie as the music began to play. Lena, now a teenager, approached him with a shy smile. "It is just a dance, Dad." He chuckled. "I know." She placed her hands in his, and they swayed to the soft music. For a moment, it was just the two of them, a father and daughter who had fought to find each other. Lena looked up at him, her green eyes filled with something unspoken. Then in a whisper, she said, "Thank you for finding me." Ethan felt his heart swell. He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "I always will." As the music faded, the final shot captured Ethan, Lena, and Ava standing together, a new kind of family, not bound by blood, not bound by obligation, bound by love. The end. Do not miss this powerful story of love, loss, and redemption. If this journey moved you, make sure to like, comment, and share your thoughts below. Subscribe to our channel for more emotional and inspiring stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Turn on notifications so you never miss an upload